Shirley Ramsey, in a peculiar sort of way, was becoming famous. She was becoming a symbol of poverty, ugliness, and untidiness for Brennen Siding, for all the Gordon Road area, and even mothers as far away as Blackville and Renew were telling their children, "You'd better get to school and learn, or you'll grow up to be poorer than Shirley Ramsey." Because of her few yellow teeth and straight, unkempt hair, her neglected figure and ragged clothing, she was literally becoming a household word in the community. When Helena MacDonald was washing up the barrels she used for salting Gaspereau, she remarked, "Smells worse than Shirley Ramsey." Bert Todder got drunk on rum one night and told Helen MacDonald that she was the prettiest woman in Brennen Siding. Helen promptly replied, "Get out with you drunken fool. I'm homelier than Shirley Ramsey." Dan Brennen drove all the way to Newcastle for a pair of boots for his son Charlie. When he entered the boot store, he realized he hadn't asked Charlie his boot size. Dan muttered, "I'm getting stupider than Shirley Ramsey." Shirley's name was used in other ways as well. For instance, if Shirley had a tool shed, which she didn't, it would have but two things in it: an axe and a dull, rusty bucksaw. Besides the chopping and sawing of whatever stovewood the Ramseys could collect, the saw and axe were also used for the execution of whatever repair jobs were needed to be done. The outdoor toilet was built, for instance, with the saw and the axe. The porch over the door was also built with the saw and the axe, and so was the lean-to shed erected every November for a wood shelter. These constructions did not go unnoticed. Many of the cuts were crooked, and many of the nails driven with the back of the axe were bent over. John Caston started the Shirley Ramsey, the bad carpenter, ball rolling when he made a bad cut while making his kitchen cupboards. "Darn," he swore, "I Shirley Ramsey'd it." While Buck was living, nobody in Brennen Siding would lift a finger to assist Shirley in any way. Buck was supposed to be responsible. If the Ramsey family starved to death, the inhabitants of Brennen Siding would not have felt the slightest twinge of remorse or guilt. After all, if a man can't look out for his family, he can't expect someone else to. Buck went away and let the whole family starve to death, Dan Brennen might say, while cutting into a roast of beef. When the people of Brennen Siding learned Buck's death, however, Shirley Ramsey took on a different status, the widow. Shirley Ramsey, the estranged wife, deserved nothing. Shirley Ramsey, the widow, needed help. Stan Tooney gave Shirley a bucket of potatoes and carrots. "You can keep the buckets," Stan told her. Dan Brennen gave Shirley a bucket of corned beef. "The bucket can be used for carrying water from the brook," said Dan. "Water is good for bathing in." Dan Brennen said this as though it was a great new revelation. He said a lot of things that way. Brennen Siding was named after his grandfather. That he felt that made him special, that he is perhaps smarter and better than everyone else. John and Max Caston were cleaning out the summer kitchen. Max was gazing into a keg of brine. "What'll I do with these old Gaspereau?" he asked. "They ain't good for nothing anymore." "Might as well throw them out. The Gaspereau will soon be running anyway." "Maybe we should give them to Shirley Ramsey." "Good idea, Max. I'll take them down to her later." John Caston was religious. He wanted to be a preacher. When he got up to Shirley Ramsey's with the bucket full of Gaspereau, he said, "When the fish are gone, you can use the bucket for carrying water. Cleanliness is godliness, you know." Shirley Ramsey was a Catholic, and John Caston was a Baptist, forever trying to convert her. He had one reservation, though. He wasn't sure if he wanted the likes of her to be associated with the church. Who'd want to sit beside her? Lyndon Tucker, who was never previously known to give anything away, gave Shirley an old galvanized tub he found in the barn. No, I want you to have it, Shirley, old girl. Want you to have it. Yeah. Good tub, that. Yep, oh yeah. Yep, good tub. Yep. Thanks, Lyndon. It's awful good o' you. Don't mention. Don't. Shirley, old girl. Glad to do it. Don't mention it. Bert Todder showed up with a black salmon. Bert Todder was fat and short. He had a single tooth in the front of his mouth that you saw whenever he laughed. He'd show his tooth, squint his eyes, and commence to jiggle and shake, the sound coming from within, more like sobs than laughter. Everyone liked him, and he visited everyone in Brennen Siding once a week. He was their reporter. When he visited, he'd mean to stay only 5 or 10 minutes. When the 10 minutes was up, he'd stand and say, "Well, I gotta go." Then he'd talk for 5 or 10 more minutes and say, "Boys, I should be off." Before he got through the door, though, he'd remember that he hadn't told you about Lester Burns falling in the river and nearly escaping drowning, the story taking 10 minutes to tell. He might sit down again to tell it, at the end of which he'd say, "It's time to leave. I gotta go home." Bert Todder usually stayed all evening. Bert Todder even paid weekly visits to Shirley Ramsey. She made good news. Because of Bert Todder, there were no secrets in Brennen Siding. Todder Brook was named after Bert's grandfather and ran through Bert's property. Bert lived the nearest of all to the Todder Brook Whooper. Shadrack Nash wanted to investigate the Todder Brook Whooper, but he didn't want to do it alone. He went to Max Caston and was laughed at. Max snorted and said, "You're crazier than Shirley Ramsey. There ain't nothing to be scared of." "Then go alone," Max eyed Shad over his chubby cheeks. "You're just too lazy to go," said Shad and left. Shad found George Hanley and Paladin Ramsey smoking cigarettes out behind Bernie Hanley's barn. George Hanley's ears were too big, as were his hands and feet, but his teeth were white and even, and he had long eyelashes and was almost pretty in the face. "I wouldn't take $1 million to step one foot into that woods," said George. The fair-skinned, brown-eyed, mysterious Paladin Ramsey, all the Ramseys were mysterious, said nothing. Paladin knew he was not being invited on the adventure. Shadrack Nash did not know that Paladin Ramsey had no fear. Out of desperation, Shad went to Shirley Ramsey's. He found Dryfly sitting on the guitar, strumming a G chord over and over again on Buck's guitar. Shad had learned a few chords from his father, and had passed his knowledge along to Dryfly. He had traded the G chord for a Glen Hall. By mid-June, he was on the verge of completing his hockey card collection. He was only missing one Johnny Bower of the Toronto Maple Leafs, a Lou Fontanado, and a Johnny Bistick, and he'd had the whole NHL. He was holding on to a C chord just in case Dryfly might get lucky enough to get one of the cards he needed. "What are you doing?" asked Shad, as if he didn't already know. "Playing me guitar." "Sounded pretty good." Dryfly shrugged. He was thin and needed a haircut. "Don't know any more chords yet, eh?" "No," said Dryfly. "Gonna listen to the jamboree tonight?" "Might." Shad was referring to the Saturday night jamboree that was broadcast from the CFNB Fredericton every week. Earl Mitten on the fiddle, Bud Brown on the MC, Kid and Ada Baker the guests more often than not. "I am," said Shadrack. "Want to come over and listen with me?" "What for? I can hear it on my own radio." "I got something I want us to do afterwards." "Gonna be awful close to dark by the time the jamboree's over." "I know," shrugged Shadrack. "I want it to be dark." "What are you gonna be doing in the dark?" "I'm going back to see what's making that noise. The Todder Brook Whooper." "Yep." "What if it's a ghost?" "I don't care." "What if it's a panther?" "Taking Dad's 303. "Yeah? How'd you get that?" "I know where it is. I'll just sneak it out. Know where the bullets are, too." "Wanna come with me?" "Nope, you'll never catch me in the woods." "Why not?" "'Cause." "'Cause why?" "'Cause you wouldn't." "Scared?" "No, but I ain't going." "Why?" "I just told ya." "You're scared." I'm not. I'm taking the 303. "You'd be a pretty lad, shooting a ghost with a big rifle like that. Knock you right over." "Don't kick hardly at all." "I'll let you try it if you want." "You fire it first." "I'll fire it. It don't kick. Fire it all the time, so I do." "What if you get lost?" "All we'll do is follow the trail back and then follow it home again. The flies will eat us up back there in the woods at night." "No flies hardly at all. Work up a sweat and they'll never touch you." It was approaching the middle of June, and Dryfly doubted very much that he could work up enough sweat to combat the 42,001 flies that would be attacking him back in the Dungarone woods. "Come with me and I'll tell you how to put a C chord on." "C chord?" "Yep, Dad says if you know C and G chords, you can play any song at all." "How far back you going?" "Not far." "What if it's a ghost?" "It's a panther." "How do you know?" "Dad says." "How you gonna shoot a panther in the dark?" "Taking Dad's flashlight, too." "Yeah?" "Yep. You can carry the flashlight, and I'll carry the rifle. We'll jack him. You hold the light on his eyes, and I'll down the bugger." Dryfly thought of the rifle, the flashlight, and two of them gunning down a panther. Dryfly wasn't sure what a panther was, but he reckoned it was a throaty creature by the sounds that came in from it every night. He thought of the C chord, and himself being able to play every song ever sung. He thought of the adventure and the stories that they'd tell everyone. He thought of being Shadrack Nash's friend, or being closer to Shad than George Hanley or Matt Casting were. "I'll come over after supper," said Dryfly. "Want to come in and have some supper with us?" "What are you having?" "Salmon." "No thanks, never cared much for salmon." Shad left thinking he wouldn't take $1 million for eating Shirley Ramsey's cooking.
Sneaking the rifle and the flashlight out was almost too easy for any kind of interesting adventure. Bob Nash had gone fishing, and Shadrack's mother was sewing in the kitchen. The rifle stood behind a chair in the living room. Shad hid the flashlight under his belt. To get the rifle, all Shad had to do was pick it up and go with it. Outside, Shad gave Dryfly the flashlight. They reckoned they had an hour before it would be dark enough to use it. The trail that led to Todder Brook country was an old neglected trucking road, originally used for hauling out pulp, logs, and boxwood, but it was evident that the road hadn't been used for years. The tire ruts were still there, but blueberry bushes and even the odd alder bush flourished in the center. Shadrack walked in one rut, Dryfly in the other. Neither boy felt like talking. Both boys were scared. Neither would admit it. Shad cocked the rifle the moment they entered the forest. There was the odd bird singing and insect buzzing. The setting sun sat like a golden bonnet on the tops of the taller trees. "How much further are we going?" said Dryfly after a while. "I don't know. Maybe a mile? I don't know. Seems to me we've come a long way already. Do you think that it's far away?" "I don't know." They continued to walk until they heard the rushing sounds of Todder Brook. Here, they noticed that the ground was speckled with numerous hoof prints, some deer, and some bigger prints they hoped were those of moose. "I don't smell anything," commented Dryfly, staring at the hoof prints. "What odds if you smell anything?" asked Shad. "I doubt if a human could smell a panther anyway, unless he had a nose right up against him. Mom told me the devil's supposed to smell right bad." "How'd she know that?" "I don't know, that's what she told me." "That's foolish," said Shadrack, but he sniffed the air anyway. Dryfly noticed that the sun had left the treetops, and the twilight had replaced it. The anticipation of the approaching night and the inevitable darkness of the forest was not what Dryfly considered to be a good time. "I think we should go home, Shad. I have to cross the footbridge tonight. It's tricky in the dark." "You can have the flashlight," Dryfly sighed. Shadrack and Dryfly found a big pine tree, and after eyeing it to make sure there were no cougars in its midst, they sat close together with their backs against the trunk. They could not be attacked from behind. Time ticked on, and darkness fell. There in the night, every sound, the snapping of a twig, the hooting of an owl, a breeze whispering in the boughs above them, quickened their imaginative young hearts. Every shadow, every form seemed a potential threat, and sometimes what they knew was only a tree or a shrub seemed to actually move. Dryfly checked out his surroundings with the flashlight about every 10 seconds. Shadrack didn't complain. "What's that?" "Where?" "There!" "I don't see anything." "There, I heard a thump." "Where?" "Listen." Dryfly couldn't hear anything, except his heart beating, but he wasn't sure. There might have been something. He might have missed something. He wasn't sure. "I think we should go home," he whispered. "Why?" "It's getting awful late." "Shh. Mom will kill me." "Wait a few more minutes."
Another deep sigh escaped from Dryfly. A bird sang, its song piercing the silence, crisp and clear. Dryfly could not identify it. He hadn't heard it before. Indians, he thought. Paladin had read a book about cowboys and Indians, in which the Indians had used the songs of birds as a form of communication. Dryfly remembered Paladin's reference to the tale. "I hope they're dead Indians," he thought. The bird sang again, and somehow sounded mournful and forsaken. "No," thought Dryfly, "I hope they're alive." A gander-bound plane rumbled far up amidst the stars, its flicker somehow reassuring as it crossed the dipper. A mosquito hummed by his ear. The bird sang once more. "What bird is that?" whispered Dryfly. "What bird?" "That one." "I don't hear it." A few minutes passed, and Shad decided he'd had enough. "Let's go," he whispered. The words "let's go" came like poetry to Dryfly's ears. They followed the flashlight beam out on the trail, their feet thumping the ground and swishing the bushes as they hurried along. Dryfly counted to himself. 1 less step, 2 less, 3, 4, 5, 6. When a rabbit has lost the chase and finds himself cornered by a hungry fox, a strange phenomenon occurs. The rabbit gives up, goes into a trance-like state, a fear-induced state of paralysis, and sometimes even dies, robbing the fox of the thrill of the kill. When Shadrack and Dryfly heard the honk from no more than 100 yards off to their right, they stopped, in a trance just short of death. The flashlight dropped from Dryfly's hand to the ground and went out at his feet. Darkness reigned supreme. Thump, thump, thump went a heartbeat. Dryfly wasn't sure if it was his own heart or Shadrack's. Shadrack wasn't sure either. Beep, barp, barp went the noise in the forest. The brief silence that followed was disrupted by a fire. Both boys knew that it had been Dryfly's release. For a moment it was impossible to say if or if not they were smelling the devil. Shadrack gripped the 303 so tight that he might have been attempting to leave finger dents in the wood. "What do we do now?" asked Dryfly in a tiny voice that seemed not to be his own. Shadrack didn't move. He couldn't think. To run seemed to be the only logical move, but in his confusion he prayed and said silently, "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray to God my soul to keep." Thump, thump, thump went a heartbeat Dryfly identified as his own. "Hail Mary, full of grace, blessed art thou amongst women." Barp, 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 beep, beep went the noise. That sounded like a sick car horn, an elephant, perhaps the scream of an eastern cougar, or all three. "Got the gun, Shad?" asked Dryfly, his voice still very tiny in the great dark forest. "Right here," said Shadrack. "Want it?" "You know how to use it." "Just pull the trigger, I think." Barp, tweep, leap. "You scared?" "What'd you say?" "You scared?" "No, I don't think so." Barp, barp, honk, beep, beep, barp, barp. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, they were able to make out the trail before them, a navy line in a black forested field, a mere reflection of the azure. Dewdrops imprisoned the azure. "The noise is coming from down by the brook," whispered Shadrack. "Fire the gun! You might scare it off if it's a cougar," Dryfly whispered back, spying for the first time since he dropped it, the flashlight. He knelt and picked it up. He pushed the button. The bulb was blown. "Won't it work?" asked Shad, musing over Dryfly's suggestion to use the gun. "The bulb's blowed," said Dryfly. "Do you think a shot would do it?" "Barp, barp, beep, beep, barp," continued the noise in the forest. "It can't hurt," said Dryfly. Shad pointed the rifle at the sky. "I hope it's a cougar. I hope it's a cougar. I hope it's a cougar," he chanted to himself. "I hope it runs away when I shoot. Runs when I shoot. Runs when I shoot." He could have been memorizing a poem. "Oh, make it run. I'll be good and go to church and everything," he prayed. Barp, 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 barp. Pow went the rifle. Silence and the smell of gun smoke. Lyndon Tucker never installed electricity in his house, but he had a battery radio. Lyndon Tucker lived with his mother and an old tomcat named Cat. When Lyndon called Cat in at night, he called, "Kitty, kitty, kitty." "Kitty, kitty, kitty," called Lyndon. "Meow," went Cat, and zipped through the kitchen door into the dimly lit room, meowed as it scanned the dark corners for mice, then jumped onto the cot behind the kitchen range. Lyndon closed the door and went back to his rocking chair. Everyone in Brennen Siding figured that Lyndon kept his lamps low to save on kerosene. He may have kept the volume of his battery radio equally as low to save on batteries. Lyndon Tucker wasted nothing. When he shopped at Bernie Hanley's store, Lyndon saved every inch of twine from the parcels. He also saved the brown paper. He saved the aluminum foil from the inside of tobacco packages and the remains of used wooden matches. Lyndon Tucker picked at his teeth with the remains of used wooden matches. Lyndon Tucker's mother sat with her ear not more than 6 inches from the radio speaker. From the CKMR station in Newcastle, Brother Duffy was busily condemning sinners. CKMR, the community voice of the Miramichi. Hayshakers hoedown at 7 p.m. News, sports, and weather followed by the marine weather forecast, with its browns, the Havas, and Fundy coasts came on at 7:30. The exotic names mentioned in the marine forecasts, the sound effects, ship's bells and foghorns, were soothing, like poetry to Lyndon. At 8:30, some heathen Catholic thing came on, which Lyndon always turned off. He'd turn the radio back on at 9 o'clock, set the dial at 5:50, and listen to the Saturday night jamboree on CFNB. The jamboree was better than usual tonight, thought Lyndon. Freddie McKenna, that blind lad, Freddie McKenna was on tonight. They claims He plays his guitar turned up on his lap. At 10 p.m., Lyndon had to oblige his mother and shift the dial back to CKMR for a Bible-thumping half-hour of Oral Roberts. Lyndon didn't mind the preaching. At least it kept his mother from complaining for a half hour. Clara, Lyndon's mother, was 80 years old and hadn't been sick for 40 years. The gift of health didn't keep her from complaining, however. Lyndon was subjected to her complaining day in and day out, her voice whining and whimpering, even when she was talking about it being a nice day. "Bless us and save us," she whined. "Yes, yes, Lord, dear Jesus." When Oral Roberts said hallelujah for the last time and went off the air, Clara leaned back in her chair and squinted her eyes to see Lyndon. Her eyesight was good, but the lamp was turned down to a mere glow. "My toe's bothering me, Lyndon. You think a person could get cancer in a toe? Some claim you can, some claim you can't. You can get gangrene in your toe. Old Billy Todd who died of gangrene in the toe. I've heard of people dying of cancer in the bowels and the stomach, but I don't know about the toe. I don't know about gangrene of the stomach either. Do you think a corn could turn to cancer, Lyndon?" "Oh, yeah, cancer, yes," said Lyndon, reaching for the dial. Lyndon stopped turning the dial when he heard the rich and mellow voice of Doc Williams talking about a picture Bible. "Just right picture Bible. WWVA, Wheeling, West Virginia," Doc was saying. "And now I'd like to do y'all a song I very much enjoy, and I hope y'all at home will enjoy too." The guitar was strummed. It sounded rich and deep. Doc Williams was the best guitar player in the world. "Hannah, Hannah, Hannah, won't you open the door? Hannah, 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 won't you change your manna? This is old Doc Williams. Don't you love me no more?" And Lyndon thought that Doc Williams was the best singer in the world, too, with the exception of maybe Lee Moore. When Doc Williams ended his show by picking Wildflower and had gone the way of Brother Duffy and Oral Roberts, Lyndon stood, yawned, and headed for the door. He needed to have a leak before going to bed. "Where are you going?" asked Clara. "To see a man about a horse," said Lyndon. The night was moonless, the deep blue sky spangled with a million stars, the Milky Way straight up. The air was warm and scented with lilacs and grass. The songs of a million night creatures, peepers Lyndon called them, betrayed the presence of the swamp. The air buzzed and hummed with midges, black flies, and mosquitoes. A bird sang, like a robin, but not a robin. A swamp robin, perhaps. Off in the east, back on Todder Brook, came the now familiar screams of what Lyndon figured was the devil. Then suddenly a rifle shot sounded from the same direction, and the devil fell silent. A shot in the dark," muttered Lyndon.